A young man wants to be the person who rules behind the shadows, far above the evil heroes and villains. Let's start this story. A very popular singer is heading towards her high school. She is very friendly with all her classmates. She pretended to have a nice character so no one would dislike her, but there was a boy she didn't like. That person always behaves in a normal way. It was as if she was hiding something. During classes she is very popular with her other classmates and was well liked by everyone. She had had an incident where she suffered a lot, so she decided to have a false face to make everyone like her. Meanwhile, the bored young man is researching things related to magic, with the sole aim of gaining more power.
More power.
She is part of the student council, so she had to stay late. It was late at night. She called her driver to pick her up, but no one was coming for her. On the other hand, some thugs were beating up the driver. She decided to go home on her own, while the protagonist watched her from afar as this singer went home alone. She was a little afraid to walk through the empty and dark streets. After a while her fear came true when some men ended up kidnapping her. She tried to resist, but it was useless. She ended up fainting. When she wakes up, these men tell her that they want to collect a monetary reward. Besides, it was a punishment for the father of this girl. The protagonist changes his clothes. He had something to do. One of the kidnappers is tired of waiting, so he decides to use force. A sound comes from the roof when a man breaks the window to enter. This man introduces himself as a slayer. One of the robbers was easily defeated by the protagonist. The other kidnapper tells him that he admires his way of fighting. He throws his pistol so that he can fight in a direct way. This man used to belong to the army. The fight is very even for the two. The protagonist knows that this man can bring him trouble, so he decides to use his best weapon to defeat him, which was a crowbar. The kidnapper realizes that the person in front of his eyes was a vigilante attacking bikers. The protagonist is glad that he knew him. Now that he knew him, he decided to beat him up with these crowbars. The hijacker wanted to pick up his weapon, but he was quickly hit with the levers, and without much mercy he ended up beating this military man. The protagonist uses a pair of scissors. She thinks she will be killed, but it was only to break the ropes that bound her. She wanted to thank him for his help, but before she knew it, the man had disappeared. The protagonist says that he is far from being the eminence of the shadows. He knows that this way he will never be what he wants. Soon after, the police arrived, also with the political power of his father hid this case. The next day she went to the institute. She greeted everyone. She also greeted the ordinary boy. But when she heard him speak, she realized that this person also hid his true face just like her. A few days later, an accident had occurred. The protagonist had been run over by a bus and killed. When he was little, without really knowing how, he ended up liking to be the person who drives in the shadows. Most would like to be a hero, but he simply wanted to be a person who goes unnoticed by the public eye, to be an ordinary person in plain sight, but deep down to be someone who has absolute control of his surroundings. That fascinated him. He wanted to be the eminence of darkness. Even if I fight criminals, there will always be something more powerful to face. The last scale was an atomic bomb. I couldn't fight against that. He wanted to overcome those limits. He wanted to be a person who does not know the limits of strength and be able to compete against an atomic bomb. This boy had arrived in another world. It was time to fulfill that dream. He had been born as a baby of an aristocratic family. Now he had a new life with this new family. Best of all, there was magic in this world and he could easily feel it. During the last years of his life, he has been living as a simple person, pretending to be weak. He had a sister who was very powerful and the most talented. She was considered a prodigy, while he was a simple weakling. That was only in public, because at night, where no one could see him, he fought against big criminals. Although he seemed to be doing it for justice, the truth was that he was doing it for the money. Now that he had finished with these thieves, he had found a strange living mass. That thing had a strange shape of flesh that emits a lot of magic. He experimented with this thing for many days, until he managed to get it back to normal. It was a very pretty girl who had returned to her true form. The protagonist wanted to be mysterious before this girl, so he tells a story where some 3 great heroes had conspired against reality. All of them formed an evil organization. Because of that cult, she had become a ball of meat. But she will not tell him the name because it is not the time for him to know. But the woman wants to know at all costs who were the people who hurt her. The things he told her were to make himself look good. So she invented that the devil cult exists. He introduces himself as Shadow, the person who lives among the shadows. This boy asks if she wants to serve him. He explains that he wants to be the eminence of the shadows. She says that when he got sick he could do nothing but ask for death. But now that he was back to normal, he wants to fulfill that wish of the person who saved him, plus he wanted to get revenge. She was a heroine who had been discarded, and now more than ever she wanted to form a facility to be able to confront the devil cult. From now on they will be called Shadow Garden. The protagonist gave her a new name. From now on she will be called Alpha. This boy is called Sid. He always pretended to be a wimp. Now he was practicing against his sister so as not to attract the attention of others. Obviously he lost on purpose. The sister was worried because her little brother was such a wimp. The sister was supposed to go to study at a prestigious institute, but one day she was kidnapped. No one had her whereabouts. She had sword skills, so the person she kidnapped must have been someone powerful. He decided to meet with his group of Shadow Garden. All these girls had been recruited to fight against the cult of evil, recruited by Alpha. The boy had never pulled more strings to get recruits, plus these girls saw him as an omnipotent being. With a little strategy, the protagonist learned where his kidnapped sister was. In a faraway place, Sid's sister was imprisoned. This man had plans for this woman. He needed her blood. The man who kidnapped her says not to worry because if the blood is not compatible, they will use her brother's blood for their plans. She gets angry. She doesn't plan to let them do that to her brother, but is silenced in one fell swoop. This man receives a report that many people have infiltrated his lair. Someone had come to rescue this girl. Obviously, the people who came were Shadow Garden. They had a single goal: to defeat the devil's cult, killing everyone they came across along the way. This man cannot believe that a group of women have interrupted his plans. Feeling inferior to these women, he decides to take some demonic pills that make him more powerful, but he decided not to fight but to leave the place. Meanwhile, Shadow was lost in the sewers. He found that man. They start a fight, but the protagonist is more than confident in defeating him, but also gives him some magic lessons. The man feels cornered, with many wounds and nothing to do. He decided to take all those pills that made him powerful. Despite all the power he radiates, he was quickly defeated by the protagonist. The man had died, but that man was hiding a necklace. The protagonist kept it for himself. The next day, the protagonist's sister had returned with many wounds. She had walked great distances to return. After healing her wounds, she had to leave for the capital. She was enrolled in a prestigious institute she could not miss. After she left, he learned that he would not see her again for 2 years, as he would also be going to study during that time. After the sister had left, Alpha talked to him. They would all be leaving. This was goodbye. Sid thought Alpha realized the lie she told, even though she was grateful to him for saving her. It seems Alpha had matured. Besides, Shadow Garden had been created by her. She had no reason to refuse to let them leave. Alpha saw him as a superhero, but it seems she had matured. It was normal to let go of those thoughts when you grow up. Sid remembered when he was in the other world. For some reason he wanted magic. The madness was such that he ended up dying. Even if he is the last person in the world, he will fulfill his dream of being the eminence of darkness. 2 long years had passed since the sister had left to study in the capital. Now he had come to study at this school, called Midgard. Since he only wanted to be an unnoticed student, he had no better choice than to seek out secondary characters as his friends. Although he was an aristocrat, he was no one special. One day he had made a bet with his friends to propose to the most popular woman in school, not because they loved her, but so that they would feel the rejection of that girl. What worse punishment than that? The protagonist had lost the bet and now he was confessing to the popular girl. The plans he had are working out. Being rejected by this beauty, he would be known as someone simple and forgettable. That was what he wanted. But that girl accepts the confession. She says she is looking for a person like him. Sid himself does not know why he was accepted. This girl is a very popular princess. Everyone had hatred for this boy that no one knew. This princess had put her boyfriend in higher classes where only the best students with the best combat skills are. He didn't want to stand out. As always, he pretended to be a weakling while practicing with the sword. Before arriving at this new facility, he did some research and her name was Alexia. This princess had a sister who was a general of the government. Alexia felt like useless next to her sister. After practice, she tells him that she hates him because he was just as weak as her. The teacher says that the practices are over. Alexia shows off her new boyfriend before her teacher. The teacher tells her that they are engaged and asks that she shouldn't have a boyfriend. She said it so calmly, as if she didn't care. The protagonist realized he was just being used by that woman to avoid his engagement. Now that he understood, he just walked away. Later the two of them meet. She says she wants to avoid her engagement, for which he must pose as her fiancé. Sid tells her that it is impossible for engagements to be broken easily. She tells him that she has a plan. It was enough for him to pretend to be her fiancé, plus she must when she will pay him some gold coins. Sid can't refuse to earn some money, so he plays along. For the next few days, they pretend to be boyfriend and girlfriend, but the professor doesn't care what they are doing. She thinks his plan isn't working as he thought it would. Sid asks her why she won't agree to marry the professor. He could see that the professor was a very kind and polite person. She says that is what she doesn't like, that he had no flaws. All people have some flaws, but that man gave no signs of any, and that made her think that he hides many things. After pretending to be boyfriend and girlfriend for many weeks, it seems that the engagement they had was not cancelled. She was tired of this. She explains that her sister had always been the one who excelled in everything. She remained as a mere shadow. She knows that her style of sword use was fatal. She will never be able to surpass her sister. Sid tells her that there are a lot of problems in the world. Maybe millions of people are dying and he doesn't care. She tells him he's trash for thinking that way, but he replies that he simply doesn't care about those people, as he doesn't consider them of value. But that doesn't mean he doesn't care about everything. What others find boring and unimportant he might like. That's just the way things are. And he likes her sword style, simply that. She asks, what did he mean by that? He says he simply wants people not to mess with something he likes, insinuating that she is the problem. She just walked away without a word. Sid assumes that was the end of the fake relationship. The next day, when they wanted to enter the institute, some guards were waiting for them. The teacher explained that Princess Alexia had not returned home.
赤いやつだ。
The boyfriend being the main suspect, he had been arrested.